Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. I'm with Tiff Needell this week, who is hot-footing all around the world because he's just been to the Monaco Historic Grand Prix. We've got this week also the Moto GP, Indycar, Formula E, BTCC, and there's always NASCAR. There's bound to be NASCAR somewhere or other as well. Your arm's going to ache by the end of this, Tiff Needell. For those of you who can't see, he's in an airport, not in a lounge. He's just with the
gates. I'm resting on the signpost here. We'll be boarding shortly. I'm down in Nice Airport, heading home after the most wonderful weekend possible. Grand Prix Historique. 8 races for all different eras of Formula One, from pre-war right through to 1985 cars. And even better, my ensign that I raced, my only Grand Prix, that was racing there. So I got to sit in it and see that car again. But I mean, the event, the racing, some of the more gentleman drivers, driving around slow just for the enjoyment. And others are just hard-on racing. The shunts they were having, hitting the walls and damaging these wonderful old cars. But it's a fabulous atmosphere, that place. You can walk around, and there's not too much crowding. And I got to interview Max Verstappen, also interview Charles LeClerc for part of. We're making the film for the Auto Club de Monaco, as well as it's coming out on ITV4, I think, the highlights in a week or so.
So
it was wonderful for Max.
What's your impression of Max Verstappen after interviewing him?
Wonderful. I mean, the great thing was they were having weekends off. Max was in just T-shirt and jeans, no ball cap covering his head with the Red Bulls, He was just so relaxed. We only asked a few questions, and he just gave charming replies and was an absolute joy. Same with Charles Leclerc, who just crashed his Ferrari, which is all over Twitter and all over everywhere. I don't know if you've seen it yet. He's in a demo in Niki Lauda's Ferrari from the 70s and ran out of brake pressure on the end of his third lap and backed it into the wall and bent the wing up. So, but again, it was after that. I said, we can, if you don't mind, we don't have to mention the crash. No, it's not a problem. I can say I had the problem with the brakes. And so an absolute wonderful weekend. If you haven't been to the Monaco Historique, I can highly recommend it. It's not around for another 2 years. I think it's going back to its every 2 years.
Which is a shame, but it's an amazing event. And the noise, your ears must still be ringing now.
Oh, we'll have an announcement coming in now. Yes, but
it was quite interesting. Whilst you've got your announcement, it's quite interesting that on Twitter somebody wrote, "How can you say that about Max? That he's not a very nice man, he's arrogant, or whatever, because you've never met him in person." But we have never said that on Twitter. We never said that on our podcast.
Sometimes he can appear quite arrogant, and sometimes he has that attitude, but not always. And, he was a delight this weekend. A great win. Stuart Hall won 2 races in these Yardley McLarens from different eras, and Michael Lyons said he did 4 races, and yet he was driving the truck home at the end of the day. Having done 4 40-minute races in Formula One cars, really physical. And he had like 4 seconds and 1 win, I think. So it's great. A lot of British contingent out there, obviously the historic racing scene, but wonderful weekend.
Lovely. We're going to go somewhere completely different now, from the beautiful V10s and V8s and V12s, all sorts of things, to silent racing, Formula E. What did you make of that? Did you get to see much of it over the weekend?
No, I'm really gutted that I was stuck in the sunshine at Monaco. I couldn't actually get to see, but I got the results. Edward Mortara won 1 race and Nick De Vries won the other. And Alexander Sims, I think is a really underrated, very talented driver. He got second on the grid in his not so quick car, but he dropped back because he couldn't stay with the energy management of the other cars. So he dropped away. Was good. Mitch Evans was the leading Jaguar. He was 5th. Sam Bird had a better day, got up to 7th. But yes, on an airfield. Did you watch it at all?
I did watch a little bit. It was just outside of Berlin, for those of you that didn't know. But it wasn't really Berlin. It says Berlin, but it's not really Berlin. It's sort of miles out of town. But it was okay. I can't get that enthusiastic about a racing series that you can't go flat out on. And for me, it's all about flat out. That's what racing is. And the limited bit of racing I've ever done, that's what it is for me, personally.
If I hadn't been down here, I probably wanted to have been at Le Mans for the Moto GPs, because that was, full of excitement and drama, as always. I mean, unbelievable. I mean, this is, in both Moto GP and Moto2, the leader crashed out. They just crashed out. You imagine a Formula One driver falling off it would never happen. See, but they're so on the edge all the time. MotoGP, it was last week's winner, Francesco Bagnaia, in the factory Ducati, who dropped it. It was him. He was being chased by the was it Enea Bastianini in the privates, the satellite Ducati, who went on to win again. So again, you got this privateer pushing the factory driver into making a mistake and dropping it. Jack Miller, I think, came home second in the end, but huge drama. Moto2, the leader to drop it, was we've been waiting for him to get his act together. the Pedro Acosta fan club, who finally qualified on pole, having not shown that much form in Moto2 so far, and he was leading. Two of them made a breakaway, and he dropped it somewhere as well. So Pedro Acosta went down the road. Our British contenders, Sam Lowe's qualified fourth, Jake Dixon third. But Sam had a huge shunt in, I think it was the final qualifying session, the final practice. So he couldn't start the race because he's suffering from, just some bruises and battering that wouldn't start. Poor old Jake Dixon had another drop down to, he retired. I don't know why he retired, back down to 21st. But it was all full of rain and dry and slicks and, jeopardy at Le Mans. It sounded like quite a hectic weekend. And Moto3, it was good to see McPhee was back. John McPhee was back. But our young lad, Scott Ogden, he only qualified 20th. He retired for some reason I don't know. Joshua Watt did 29th and finished 26th. But, just reading the reports, there was just so much action and excitement.
There always is. There always is on these two. How much of the circuit do they use of the 24-hour race?
Oh, yeah. They use the car park. It's called the Bugatti circuit, and it's horrible. It's about 10 hairpins, 2 chicanes, about 1 fast corner. So not my car. That's why they fell quite often, because the front end tucks in around those very tight hairpins, and it's the slower corners that most of the accidents happen at Le Mans. But it was always a great spectacle.
Speaking of great spectacles, let's go to BTCC, because British touring cars, that's this hybrid era is, it's still wham bam, thank you, man. But it's but plenty going on, plenty of action all the time.
Well, I'd like to see, because you talk about rain and dry at Le Mans. It was the same at Brands Hatch, and it sounds like it was an epic day to be watching touring cars, because there were people coming through from the back and getting up to the front, and the BMWs didn't seem like the wet. And some started the first race on slicks and others on wets, and it seemed like a really chaotic weekend. But it was Josh Cook for Honda, one of the privateer teams, came through the win. In fact, he won the first 2 races, so great. That's Jason Plato's teammate. Jason having a couple of trips to the gravel and not quite such a good weekend as his teammate, Josh Cook. And then the reverse grid, it was Turkington came through, didn't his BMW? It was drier then.
He did well, yeah.
Whereas 12th place, it was Tom Chilton got pole position because they drew 12, the biggest number, I think that is, on the reverse grid. So, poor old Josh Cook was put back to 12th for the last race. I think he got through to 4th or 5th, but it sounded like it was really classic BTC, pace cars, safety cars, crashes, everything, drama wherever you looked.
Yeah, and I don't know whether they've done some work to brands, but it looked amazing. I guess the weather we're having in the UK, sunny, rainy, the grass always looks great, so green, but the rumble strips, brands was looking fantastic. So BTCC.
Jonathan Palmer for you. Jonathan Palmer always has an eye for detail, and that's what he does to these tracks that he takes over. He's been great.
It's true. It's great that you said that, because you go to any MSV track and you drive in, and just the hedges are neat, the grass is always cut, and that's a testament to them.
That's Jonathan.
Good, and long may that continue. IndyCar.
More rain and chaos. It's bizarre. Luckily, Monaco had this most beautiful sunshine all weekend. But everywhere else seems to have rain and chaos, because it was the IndyCar. It was the Grand Prix second. Well, it's not the Grand Prix second anymore. It's the infield, so the road course, as they call it. And I've just read the report, and it just sounds like mayhem. Again, some chose slicks, some were on wets. There were safety cars, people off on the grass, and because Colton Herta, who hasn't had a good year so far, he's crashed a couple of times when he could have been winning, and he qualified 14th. He was the one that came through the win. So I think every driver would have said, I could have won that. The Brits quite good. Callum Ilott or Ilott, I'm still never quite sure. Please.
I think it's Ilott. He says Ilott. He came along to our drag race at Dunkers.
Was he there?
Yeah, he came along. Yeah. He was Ferrari boy then, of course, which still is, but came along.
Well, he qualified 7th. He was sort of with the leading pack, ended up 8th, but anybody could have won. Jack Harvey finally had a good race. He qualified 9th, but he was up in the top 3 for a while, and then depended so much when you timed your pit stops by the sounds of it, when you went from slicks to wets. But sounded like another very entertaining race, which I look forward to checking out when I get home.
I like Indy cars. They're, it's good. The beautiful looking cars. They sound good. They're full on. I love the 360 views they do with the overtaking. I know NASCAR that we're going to move on to next does a lot of that as well. NASCAR.
I don't know much about, but apparently it was a great run. It was a Busch last finish. Toyota sandwiching the Chevrolet with love. Larson was leading, and but it was Kurt Busch who hasn't won for a while. I'm not sure quite how long back it was, but Kurt slowly worked at Larson and got by with a few laps to go, and had a famous win with his brother coming in third. So good race. And of course, it wasn't raining there; otherwise, they wouldn't have been racing.
Right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, anyone that's
hold on.
Anybody that's listened to this long means you are a proper avid fan, and we appreciate it. We've got to do something about our audio, not just now. Clearly, Tiff's traveling, but I think because we're on the road quite a lot, maybe when we have a week when Tiff's away or I'm away, we get a guest in instead. Maybe we look at that. And when we'll call...
You're replacing me now. You're replacing me.
And when we're...
This is on 4G I'm talking to, so it's quite good 4G in Leeds Airport.
It's just the audio is great. So anyone that's listening to this at this late stage, they're a proper fan. They're a diehard fan. So thank you. But it's just
my arm's been stuck. That feels better now. I thought I was going to lose all feeling in that.
10 out of 10. Okay, enjoy your flight. Okay, thanks for joining, everybody. See you next week. Cheers.
Bye.